All right, philosophy study. So July 31st. So Wednesday, we're in the Toronto Metropolitan University Library. So we did a little talk about some stuff. I'll just do 2 videos. You guys can check that out. And now we're going to get into put first things first. So this is the second video for put first things first. I sent the slides, the PowerPoints, so you guys can look at that. I also put it in the WhatsApp chat group. If you're watching this and you're not in the chat group, well, it's an opportunity. This is the reason why being in the chat group is a good thing, right? Okay, so this is the first slide. So as my general strategy here is to read the slide, kind of talk about it a bit, and then we'll go through the chapter itself. So we're talking about quadrant 2 stuff. So quadrant 2 are activities or things that are important, but they're not urgent. And so the habit is when we're thinking about how we spend our time, he wants us to kind of like ask 2 questions. Is this important? And if it's important, it's relevant to your personal mission in life or your meaning in life, whatever that is. And is it urgent? Must it be completed immediately, right? If you're stuck in doing things that are urgent all the time, urgent and important, that means that you're continually dealing with a crisis after crisis. And that's like, he would say, not a good way to live, right? Because there's a lot of usually high stress, a lot of cortisol. There's a lot of reasons why that would be uncomfortable. The best way to do, and this is what people generally think of when they talk about the term proactive. They really just mean don't procrastinate and plan stuff, right? But in the chapter on being proactive, he communicates that being proactive is actually being aware and deciding what your response to stimuli in your experience will be, whatever that is, right? It's opposed to being reactive. That's how he defines being proactive. So it's a broader definition than just not procrastinating, right?
What do you mean by procrastinating?
Like putting things off until later, or just not making decisions, right? So he wants us to make decisions, to do things. He says, use your best hours towards your most valued goals or attaining your most valued goals. And the great thing about this is it's not a rigid thinking formula. We can create this schedule or this prioritization of what we're going to do, and then we can have principles to guide us on when to use it, right? So if you're super stressed out and you don't feel good, but you have like watch Achilles lecture online on your calendar, you can say, you know what, it's better for me to lie down and meditate right now because I have a principle of if I feel very stressed out, I will meditate to reduce my internal stress, right? And that's of a higher priority in life generally than watching YouTube or whatever's going on, right? So that's a good thing. You don't have to be strict to the schedule that you've created for yourself. So now you have to read the beginning of the chapter to kind of see where we're at. But now we're in the middle of what quadrant 2 is. So quadrant 2 is things that are important, but they're not urgent. So not urgent means that you kind of have free time and you can do whatever you want in that moment. So you could do things that are pleasant. So I guess we can go back a couple of pages here.
Sorry, quick question.
Yep.
Does the author use an animal to symbolize the each quadrant? I remember like a dog. I don't remember.
Not sure. He has this diagram.
Yeah. He has this diagram.
Right. So if we go to page 173, so you just go back like 10-ish pages in your book. So 173 for you. Got it there? Yeah. So the management matrix. So if it's important and urgent, quadrant 1 are like, that's the crises, pressing problems, or things that have to be done immediately. Then number 2 is it's still important and not urgent. So that's a prevention thing. That's a production capability thing. So like maintaining yourself or like things like exercising or fixing stuff. Relationship building, recognizing new opportunities, planning, recreation. Quadrant 3 and 4, he says you almost want to minimize those completely. Quadrant 3 is it's urgent, but it's not important. So if it's not important, even if it's urgent, then why would you be doing it? So for example, before I came here today, I was reading the rest of this chapter and I only had so much time, right, before I got here. And there was somebody that lives with me that urgently wanted to talk about stuff. They wanted to talk about like business development stuff that I'm working on.
How can something be urgent but not important?
That's a good question.
That's what
I
I'm
don't
talking.
understand.
Yeah. So like, let's say somebody came in here and they said, "Hey, do you want to subscribe to this magazine? It's like fluorescent flowers up weekly." Something that you're like, "What? I don't care about that at all," right? It's not important to you, but it's in your face. So the person is saying, I want you to address this value that they may have, but you don't value it, right? Or like sports. I'm not a big sports person. There's sports stuff going on all the time. And I will miss it if I wanted to see it live. But because I don't value it, it has nothing to do with my personal mission.
Okay, it's just the pressure of time then.
Yeah. Right?
Isn't that the strategy to deal with this quadrant is to assign to somebody else, right?
He talks about that later on,
Yeah.
to delegate that stuff.
Delegate that.
Yeah. And it's not an all or nothing thing. Like, we could criticize this matrix by saying, is it always in one box or the other? But I would say there's a gradient. Like, there is a degree to which, like, for example, mowing the lawn at my house. Like, it's how urgent is it? Like, how long does the grass have to be for it to like qualify urgency? I don't know. I have no idea. But there's a certain point, like it kind of needs to get done. It has some importance, but like me reading this book is more important than that. Just this, But if the grass is like this long, it's like that means I didn't cut it all year. Like it went way beyond, I didn't do anything, And so, yeah, it's not an all or nothing thing. I think we want to think of it dimensionally, then categorically, even though in this context, we're looking at it categorically. Okay? And he says that later on too.
So I have another example. I don't know which quadrant it belongs to. So on Monday, I'm suffering some pain, teeth pain. Toothache. Yeah. So I should have, gone to see a dentist on Monday, but I hesitant because I thought maybe because it's again expensive, right? So maybe I could just do some treatment myself. So I didn't go, and it ended up it was so pain at that night I couldn't sleep until like 4 a.m. And then it affected my Tuesday, whatever. And it actually affect my today. So using this thing, if I've gone, if I had gone to see the doctor, then I could be much better,
Yes.
So instead, I end up, so maybe that's the toothache is quadrant 1. It's important and
it's urgent.
and it's urgent.
So the mistake,
why I have make a wrong decision? I don't know. Why.
you're lacking the principle to correctly have guided you in that situation.
So instead of putting in quadrant 1, I delayed it. I thought it's not urgent, first of all. So so I mistakenly put in second quadrant 2. Is that the problem?
Yeah, well, you delayed it, so you didn't say it was urgent, right? And you
Yeah.
maybe reduced its importance as well. Because
Right.
if it was really that important, it may have been more urgent too, right?
Right.
And so I think that having a preventative perspective or paradigm, as Covey would say, is the best when it comes to health stuff, right? It's better for me to address this sooner than later, because if I wait, it will get worse. So that's my principle for like all health things. And so there's a degree of wisdom here. Like, I have to be able to discern what is something that needs to be addressed. So for example, I was doing deadlift like a month ago and I tore a muscle in my back. But I know my body really, like, I have a good sense of my body. And I was like, I will be able to recover on my own. I know what to do, right? It wasn't an emergency. It was serious, but it wasn't an emergency, right? Whereas if I was like on the ground and I can't move, right, I can't walk at all, then I would have to go to the hospital.
But sometimes you just don't know the importance of that thing, like the toothache, because based on my previous experiences, I took a chance.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I don't need to go. Maybe I can wait, a few days, actually, because next year there's this federal government's program that everyone can go there
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
and get free. So
Sure.
so I kind of say, yeah, maybe I will wait a few more months, you know. So for that, is it because we lack of the experiences so that we make a wrong judgment?
Sometimes you do need to experience things,
Mhm.
right? Like that's, and then the point is to learn from those experiences.
Yeah.
And so in this case, like, and acknowledging an error. Oh, it was better if I would have went to the thing earlier. I should have done that. That's wise. Okay, let's continue.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so this is the quadrant here. So let's give a little like firm to the camera. There you go. That's what it looks like. You can pause the thing if you need to look at it for longer than a second. And so now we're back on page 184. So in this, he's trying to teach principles of effectiveness, right? And not specifically practices. So he's not giving us like specific what to do, but looking at generalized principles that we can use to develop practices that are more specific. So quadrant 2, he says, involves 4 activities. So the first thing, organizing within a quadrant 2 paradigm, the first thing we want to do is, and I'm reading from the slides, identify what roles we have, right? Where do you invest your time and energy on a regular basis? So he says empirically, you can look at your life and break up your existing time into different roles. And then you can say, throughout the week or the day, what is my role in these periods? And that's the first thing he says to do. So he gives some examples. And then the number 2 is goals, right? And so that goes back to our meaning in life again. And earlier in the personal mission statement, he talks about how we want to identify what our roles are, like being a good parent or being a good friend, right? Or being the guy that runs the philosophy study. And then our goals, what our goals would be. So selecting goals. So that goes back to our personal mission statement. What matters to you, right? And if like I am a vocalist, and so as a singer, it's important for me to practice singing like a little bit throughout the week, actually every day. But my priorities have shifted a bit recently. But as a goal, if I want to be a good singer, I'm going to have to maintain my voice through practice. So if I know that's a goal, then I can look throughout the week and find some time to sing, right? And he talks about short-term goals. You'll see results within a week. Long-term goals, you'll determine 1 or 2 roles per week. So yeah, so I guess we'll have to look at the chapter, see specifically what he means here with this. Yeah, and then scheduling. He wants to break this down into a weekly scheduling. And I guess, I don't know at the time if people were just doing daily scheduling, if that was a thing in the 80s, I'm not really sure. But his whole thing is doing it weekly. And then he wants to have positive uplifting activities that you plan for and look at the goals and roles and then put those into your days of the week. That way, every week you're making progress in what your roles are that you find important and the goals that you have for yourself. And then he wants us to have specific action plans. And then he has this slot for sharpening the saw or renewing, which is the last habit. And then slide 2, the 4th element is daily adapting. You need to be able to have the freedom and flexibility to respond to unanticipated events, shift appointments, and attend relationships. So even though you might schedule something in, something might happen, right? Like today, I had a meeting and I was focused on being effective with this person and not efficient. So I spent like an hour and a half or whatever, even though I was like, I want to do triceps today. That's what I have scheduled. The meeting took precedent over that, right? Because I wanted to make sure that my time with the person was of as highest quality as it could be. And so he says the function of daily adapting, prioritizing activities and experiences meaningfully, right? So sometimes there's almost like this closure effect with people that you want to get to a certain level in your relationship with that activity or that experience. And then you can kind of like disengage and then you can come back another time, right? Every morning you want to review the schedule. And he says there's a false dichotomy of activities being either important or not. So I identified this earlier. And there's a continuum of importance. So some activities are, it's not that they're in a category of good or bad. They're on like a spectrum, right? So let's look at the section here in the chapter. So 184. So I kind of just read through this. I underline stuff. I annotate my book. And I just read what I underlined. And then you guys can interject at any time and we can discuss that specific point, or I'll expand on a point, we'll philosophize it as we go through, right? Effort here is to teach principles, not practices of effectiveness. You can better understand the principles and the empowering nature. So empowering here, I don't know if that's the correct use of the word. I actually just wrote an essay on empowerment. Empowerment is like a social political phenomena that occurs with you feeling that the group is supporting you. I think he really means motivating here. The motivating nature of the fourth generation, or maybe just power, how powerful the fourth generation is for you. Because it's not a socio-political context. If you are actually experiencing organizing a week from principle-centered quadrant 2 base. Quadrant 2 organizing involves 4 key activities. So number 1, identifying roles. First task is to write down your key roles. So on the second page here, he has a whole list of roles that he has. And within his job, he has multiple roles, right? So that's important. Write down what immediately comes to mind. So there's role as you as an individual, your personal stuff. List a few roles in your work, indicating different areas in which you wish to invest time and energy on a regular basis. Roles, community affairs. Don't need to worry about defining the roles. Live in a way that you're going to live with those roles for the rest of your life. So that your roles might change over time. But what's going on for you right now? Okay, I think we have a thing. Consider the week and write down, so what's going on with you right now in your life? So I have like a role in my dog, like I'm a dog owner. And so like taking Sophia to the lake is something that I got to do, right? Feeding her, making her feel good. That's important. It's my responsibility. And I like doing it. Consider the week, write down the areas you see yourself spending time during the next 7 days. So here's 2 examples of how people will break up roles that they have, right? So on the left side, there's individual stuff. So like maybe exercising, cooking, doing laundry, then your role to your partner, right? Then within the context of work, he has new products, research, staff development, and administration. Those are 4 different roles. And then he's a chairman for United Way. So another way to do it is personal development, spouse, he's a parent. Maybe this specific individual is a real estate person. They also have community service and they're a board member for the symphony, right? These are different roles. So the next activity for quadrant 2 organizing is selecting goals. So think of 1 or 2 important results you feel you should accomplish in each role during the next 7 days. These are goals. So for me, I'm a student and I have an exam tomorrow, right? And I got to do that exam. It's very important that I do that exam. I have studied almost all the stuff, but there is some significant reading to be had in the next 16 hours. So the goal is to have all of the reading done, right? And so I have to schedule that in my head in a fluid way. I'm not actually going to write it down, but yeah, that's what I have to do as that thing. So that's my goal within the role of being a student in my sleep psychology class, right? Some of these goals should reflect quadrant 2 activities. So some of these goals reflect quadrant 2 activities. So now he wants us to look at the goal and ask yourself, is it important and is it urgent? Right? And depending on what your answer is, that's where you're going to prioritize it within your weekly schedule, right? The weekly goals would be tied to the longer term goals you have identified in conjunction with your personal mission statement. So that goes back to the previous chapter on developing this personal mission statement. And that's super important for us, right? Because if you haven't read this book yet, so he basically says that like, it's just explicating like your identity. So what David is talking about, habit 2 is the answer to that question, right? It's like the sandcastle saying, I will be a sandcastle with right angles and a long cylindrical wizard's tower that has a pointy top to it. And I will have a sandcastle finish that protects me from the rain or something like that. Little rocks that make me look good. And everyone that walks by will take a selfie and hopefully no one falls into me and destroys me. Like, I don't know, whatever the sandcastle personal mission statement would be, right? So for me, part of my mission statement is creating an organization that's analogous to religion, that does not appeal to authority, God, or faith, that gives people a sense of meaning and teaches them the skills of living a mentally healthy life. Boom. Right? How do you do that? I don't know, but I'm here trying to figure it out. So that's an
excellent goal.
Right? So that's one of the things I do. And then there's other things. I need to also live a happy life for myself. Having a dog makes me really happy. She's my like little baby. I take care of her. Boom. Super happy. Right? And then I like to go dancing because there's just certain things that I need to do for myself. So when I go dancing, I will be the dance champion, right? Leticia saw me the dance champion weeks ago. Was I the dance champion?
You were, yeah,
Why?
because you were.
Because I was, okay.
You like dancing?
I am the dance champion.
Champion.
Not only do I like
What
dancing,
kind of dance?
I like EDM rave dancing. I like completely taught myself to do it. I could actually teach people to do it.
Yeah.
It's funny. Sometimes I have to do that. Like dudes come up to me, or they're like, "What are you doing?" Or like girls will bring their boyfriends, and they're like, "That's what I'm talking about. Be like him." It's weird, but it's the chief role, you know. Chief brings people together. Anyways, so those things are part of my role. So we all want to think about what's important to us and then incorporate that into our personal mission statement. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I have like a bunch of school stuff to do, but if I sacrifice on the dance champion thing, right, it will affect me in a different way. I will feel less alive, you know? And so it's important to take the time to do that. So, okay, personal mission statement, right? So what do you value and how can you uphold that in a principle-centered kind of way, right? So philosophically, some statements can just be facts, whereas others can be principles for how you're going to live your life, right? If this occurs, like hypotheticals, then I will do this, like an algorithm almost. Scheduling, right? That's where we are. Yeah, so if you haven't written your personal mission statement, you can get a sense of what's important when you consider your roles or your goals, right? So scheduling, look at the week ahead with your goals in mind and schedule time to achieve them. For example, he's just the first draft of your personal mission statement. Set aside 2 hours and work on it. Plan your more personally uplifting activities and weekly organizing. Time to draw back, to seek inspiration, look at your life in the context of principles and values. Set a goal to become physically fit through exercise. Set aside an hour, 3 or 4 days during the week, every day during the week to accomplish that goal. Some goals that you may only be able to accomplish during business hours. The advantages of organizing the week instead of the day. Having identified roles and set goals, translate each goal to a specific day of the week. Priority, good. Item, or even better, a specific appointment. Check your annual or monthly calendar for any appointments that you may have previously made and evaluate their importance in the context of your goals, transferring those you decide to keep to your schedule and making plans to reschedule or cancel others. So our digital scheduling, like Google Calendar, kind of does this for us already, right? As you study the following weekly schedule, observe how each of the 19 most important quadrant 2 goals have been scheduled or translated into a specific action plan. Notice the box labeled sharpen the saw. This is the next page. Provides a place for vital renewing quadrant 2 activities. So sharpen the saw is like a production capability habit. So it's just like maintaining stuff, like reviewing your personal mission statement. There's writing the thing and then there's reviewing it and editing it, right? Or like reevaluating your diet plan or reevaluating your exercise plan. That's sharpening the saw. Time set aside to accomplish 19 important goals during the week. Look at the amount of remaining unscheduled space on the schedule. Empowering you to put first things first, quadrant 2 weekly organizing gives you the freedom and the page 187 and the flexibility to handle unanticipated events. So that's really the purpose he's trying to get here. He's trying to reduce the amount of time you're in crisis mode, get everything you need to get done, right? And then still have time left over. That's why he says it's effective. And there's wisdom in that. I would say there's wisdom in that. That's why it's philosophical. But it's practical philosophy. It's not necessarily like conceptualizing and looking at the arguments behind a thing. It's how does this improve our lives, which is wise. To shift appointments if you need to, savor relationships and interactions with others. Deeply enjoy spontaneous experiences. Proactively organize your week to accomplish key goals in every area of your life. So this little diagram here, you have your mission statement, you have roles and goals. So long-term organizing. And then you have roles, goals, and then plans, which you can either schedule or delegate, right? Daily adapting. With quadrant 2 weekly organizing, daily planning becomes more a function of daily adapting, of prioritizing activities, and responding to unanticipated events, relationships, and experiences in a meaningful way. Taking a few minutes each morning to review your schedule can put you in touch with the value-based decisions you made as you organized the week, as well as on unanticipated factors that you may have come up. As you overview the day, you can see that your roles and goals provide a natural prioritization that grows out of your innate sense of balance. Softer, more right brain prioritization that ultimately comes out of your sense of a personal mission. The third generation scheduling, where you're just rigid to a schedule, ABC or 1, 2, 3 prioritization, gives needed order to daily activities. So this is our schedule, right? Showing the thing. So when we look at the schedule, he has on the bottom left, sharpen the saw. So different ways that you can like renew or improve existing practices in your life. And then he's implemented all of these goals, like he has the roles and the goals on the left, and then he's put them in specific spots, right, on the schedule. And then he's trying to say, like, look at how much free time we have, right? So that's great. So 190. It's a false dichotomy to say that activities are either important or they aren't. Obviously a continuum, and some important activities are more important than others. So that's what I meant about dimensional versus categorical. Third generation prioritization gives order to daily focus. Trying to prioritize activities before you even know how they relate to your sense of a personal mission and how they fit into the balance of your life is not effective. So that's important, right? Some people just say, I'm busy. Okay, like doing what? Right? Just finding things to do doesn't mean they're important. Like I remember I was a kid and I was playing with the dirt, right? Maybe at that time in my life, I was understanding like texture, something like that. But if I was playing with dirt today, if I was literally on the ground going like this and just like moving dirt around, you'd be like, what the hell are you doing? How is that important, right? Unless I'm a geologist. If I was a geologist, okay. This is not the Geology Society. In the context of weekly organizing, third generation prioritization gives order to daily focus. Trying to prioritize activity, maybe prioritizing and accomplishing things you don't really want or need to be doing at all. Can you see the difference between organizing your week as a principle-centered quadrant 2 manager and planning your days as an individual centered on something else? Sense the tremendous difference the quadrant 2 focus would make in your current level of effectiveness. So that's just ask yourself, is this important? Is it urgent? And then trying to just organize it based on those properties, right? Experience the power of principle-centered quadrant 2 organizing. Seen it transform other people, makes a difference, positive, so just like personal experience stuff. More completely, weekly goals are tied into a wider framework of correct principles and into a personal mission statement, the greater the increase in effectiveness will be. So next slide, boom. Living it. So he gives an example of the computer metaphor. Habit 1 is you're the programmer. Habit 2 is write the program. These are different paradigms or perspectives to take. Habit 3 is run the program or live the program. Our values give meaning or context to our goals, schedules, and lives. So he just like, and that's fundamentally what he means by being effective, is know what's important to you. Like we're all humans, so we all got to breathe, right? We all need to eat. Some foods are better than others. There's some variance in what specific foods each of us can have. But like if I eat chips every day, doesn't matter who you are, it's bad for you, right? So he gives another example of his son. His son has got super awesome schedule. It's like super rigid. He's like, this is what I'm doing, okay? And he schedules dumping his girlfriend. He's like, I'm going to call her 15 minutes, boom. And they were dating for a while, okay? But the phone call specifically took an hour and a half. And that wasn't even enough time, right? To effectively have an understanding with each other, him and this girl. The frustration, so the next thing he says is frustration is a function of our expectations. Expectations are a reflection of the social mirror. What he means by that is we develop expectations in some ways from experience. Like it rains and I see a rainbow. I was like, oh, okay. Rains again. I'm like, there's probably going to be, there might be a rainbow, and if I see one, oh, there it is, Whereas sometimes my expectations are because that's what culture or society is imposing in me, right? Through the media or the way we relate to each other. There's social norms. And so he says you can subordinate your feelings and those social expectations to higher superordinate values, and you can adapt in the moment so that you're not a slave to conforming to society if those standards are incoherent or just garbage standards.
I don't understand this sun dumping girlfriend. What's the point here?
So he gives an example of how the third generation scheduling paradigm, right, would be like, if I have a schedule for things, then the schedule is the most important thing. I will always follow the schedule. So like today, I could have been like, I'm going to schedule 10 minutes for this meeting with this person I met today, right? But when I was with the person, I felt that it was better to spend more time with them. I just felt that. I was vibing with them. We were chilling out. Boom. Right? And so I rearranged my schedule to accommodate the in-the-moment experience. And so his son made a mistake. His son scheduled time to break up with his girlfriend. They were dating for a while, right? He's like, I'm going to do it 15 minutes, done, right? But when he was on the phone with her, she became very upset. Like, what the hell are you talking about? We're breaking up. I mean, this is terrible. I don't want to do that. And so it took way longer than 15 minutes. And he became frustrated because of that. And it pushed back his schedule. And so if you have he's trying to say is, don't expect to follow your schedule perfectly. Your schedule is a tool that you use to engage throughout the day. But as things come up in the day, you may have to modify your schedule based on those, whatever's going on in your life, right?
That's the fourth generation.
That's the fourth generation. Not only that, but also the roles you have in your life, and then goals associated with the roles. The third generation doesn't have that, nor does it have the sharpen the saw thing at the bottom.
But why? But just to stand on this. So why he at the first, only assigned 15 minutes for breaking up with his girlfriend, because it looks like these are very important things,
Yes.
right? It's probably also associated with his mission, maybe his mission. I could say, maybe the mission is, I need to have a good relation, be caring about people, right? So how do you only assign 15 minutes? This is definitely a quadrant 2 things, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So is there something wrong with at the first scheduling? Like he shouldn't just. I mean, even like I don't know. I guess there's something wrong.
It's an error. Yeah. He's giving us an example of where his son made the mistake. And I think it was in the previous slide. He says, where he said,
And why are you dumping, right? Why you use the word dump? That's a disrespectful.
Sure, yes. He says that, I'm not sure which slide it's on, but he says that we want to be effective with people. It's somewhere in this, and efficient with things. So his son was trying to be efficient with his girlfriend, but he needed to be effective with her. He needed to try to make it so she wasn't suffering and take care and be empathetic and talk about it and work through it together, right?
So I can imagine, so I'm kind of wondering what's his son's, obviously he didn't talk that details about, but there's something to do with what's his son's mission, like goal in life, in terms of in the area of a relationship,
Yeah, I'm not sure. We could criticize him based
Right,
on that.
yeah.
Where does that fall into your personal mission statement?
Right, yeah.
Well, let's go through the chapter. Let's part of the book. Let's read what he says. So, living at page 190 in this book. It would be the next page in your book, I think. I'm not sure.
I can listen.
All right, she's gonna listen. Very good. The computer metaphor. If habit 1 says you're the programmer, and habit 2 says write the program, then habit 3 says run the program, live the program. Living it is primarily a function of our independent will, self-discipline, integrity, and commitment, not to short-term goals and schedules or to the impulse of the moment, but to correct principles and our own deepest values, which give meaning and context to our goals, our schedules, and our lives. As you go through your week, there will undoubtedly be times when your integrity will be placed on the line. Popularity of reacting to the urgent but unimportant priorities of other people in quadrant 3, or the pleasure of escaping to quadrant 4. You will threaten to overpower the important quadrant 2 activities. Your principle center, your self-awareness, conscience, can provide a high degree, 191, degree of intrinsic security, guidance, and wisdom to empower you to give you power, to use your independent will and maintain integrity to the truly important. You aren't omniscient, can't always know in advance what is truly important. As carefully as you organize the week, there will be times when, as a principle-centered person, you will need to subordinate your schedule to a higher value. Do that with an inner sense of peace. So you need to know what your values are. Because if you schedule all these other things that are just a bunch of values on a calendar, and then something occurs in the moment, you have to be able to say, what is the most important thing here? That way you can say, oh, I have to put this aside. Like today, when the person was trying to have a business meeting, I'm like in the middle of reading this thing here. I was like, no, okay, that's important, but not right now. Right? Okay. So the son was deeply into scheduling, efficiency, very tight schedule, down to the minute time allocations for every activity. Picking up books, washing his car, dropping Carol, his girlfriend, and a bunch of other stuff. Everything went according to plan until it came to Carol. They were dating for a long time, and he came to the conclusion that a continued relationship was not good. Congruent with his efficiency model, he had scheduled 10 to 15 minutes to phone her and break up with her. The news was very traumatic to her. 1.5 hours later, he was still deeply involved in the very intense conversation. One visit was not enough. The situation was very frustrating for both of them. You can't think efficiency with people. You think effectiveness with people and efficiency with things. Try to be efficient with disagreeing or disagreeable person, and it simply doesn't work. 10 minutes of quality time to a child or an employee to solve a problem, only to discover such efficiency creates new problems and seldom resolves the deepest concern. Mothers with small children often get frustrated, as an example, in their desire to accomplish a lot because all they seem to do is meet the needs of little children all day. Frustration is a function of our expectations. Our expectations are often a reflection of the social mirror rather than our own values and priorities. If you have habit 2 deep inside your heart and mind, what the habit 2? Oh my God. Begin with the end in mind. I was confusing much in my head. If you have habit 2 deep inside your heart and mind, you have those higher values driving you. You can subordinate your schedule to those values with integrity. You can adapt. You can be flexible. You don't have to feel guilty when you don't meet your schedule or when you have to change it.
So just now I have a better understanding of the example.
Yeah.
But somehow I guess so it's against my my intuitive intuition. Like I'm keep asking, why this guy only spend 15 hours, even spend 1.5 hour about this thing. I don't think it's about the time. It's about time. It's because his girlfriend feel traumatic. So I'm wondering how do they something to do how do they deal be with each other, like what's their principles in terms of relationship. It's not about at the end how much time you spend in dumping or whatever. It's about how you treat before you enter the relation. What kind of thing that you already agree, what's the habit when you are with each other. It's about that. It's not about how much time you spend at the last minute of the relationship, right? It's about there's something more deeper.
Yeah, well, he's like his son is in the efficiency paradigm, not the effectiveness paradigm. And the next statement he says is
efficient.
You can't think efficiently with people. You think effectiveness. And you're efficient with things. So it's not about, because in some ways you're using them as a means to an end, right? Can I get some water really quick? Give me 1 second, guys. I just have like hot.
Effective and efficient, to me that sounds like the same thing. That
Effective is you want to get what you want to get done. Like you have a goal and you want to get to that goal. Effective. Efficient is you want to get it over with as fast as possible. You want to do it in the shortest amount of time possible. So you have to be effective with people because you want them to
To understand.
understand what you're trying to
Your
say. And with things, you want to get that thing done in the fastest manner possible. But things don't have feelings, so you don't really have to consider if they are understanding, because it's a thing.
Because yeah, I agree with you. You know, when he talked about, you know, we cannot be efficient with people, because I thought about I thought about the principles like you cannot treat people just as a means.
Yes.
You know, you have to be treat people as an aim in itself.
Yes.
Especially not just the you know, this to say this is your girlfriend, right? It's not just
a lack of empathy.
right,
Mhm.
exactly. It's not about efficiency at all. I just feel like that this is not efficient. That there's something wrong with this guy's mission statement.
Yeah.
It's just totally wrong. Maybe he's not principle centered. Maybe he's I don't know. Maybe he's I don't know.
He could just have low IQ, low EQ, sorry.
Yeah.
Just not very emotionally in tune or intelligent. He doesn't understand what it means to break up with someone that loves him and is in a relationship with him. He thinks I'm done, so therefore when I tell her I'm done, then she should also be done. But she is not him. So that's why it takes like a whole drawn out thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. There's something not just about efficiency, just the gut feeling.
Or maybe he has just no empathy and he doesn't care, and that's it.
It's true.
So can the people have the principle of I don't care about people?
Well, that's where we have to talk about correct principles, and that's not
Right.
really addressed in the book.
Right.
So that's where we need to like take this model and then develop it from there,
Yeah.
right? So that's why we're going to continue massaging this philosophically after,
Uh-huh.
but he just kind of goes through these 7 habits as like principles, basically, right?
Right. I understand. I just feel like if you don't have the correct principle, then you already something wrong with the source at the very beginning. Then if you don't only deal with how much time you're spending on dropping a person, that's not the solution. That's not the right solution. You just focus on the wrong thing.
That's why he gives this principle. I'll read it again, right? It's on 191. Think effectiveness with people and efficiency with things. So that's a principle. All right, let's take the horse to the next stage here. Okay, so the next section, there are 2 slides we're going to talk about. Advances in the 4th generation. So 3rd generation loses spontaneity. It's rigid and inflexible, subordinating people to schedules. So that's what his son was doing to his girlfriend, right? The 4th generation, in terms of effectiveness rather than efficiency for oneself. Quadrant 2 is to center life on principles, giving a clear expression to purpose and values that direct daily decisions, creating balance in life. When higher value comes into conflict with the plan, we become motivated with self-awareness. We use our compass instead of the roadmap, a more advanced form of self-management. So we can make decisions in the moment and determine that the schedule or the plan is not appropriate to the situation we're dealing with. So he has 5 properties here. The 4th generation is 5 things. First, it's principle centered. It sees time in the context of what is really important and effective. Number 2, it's conscience directed. We organize our life in harmony with our deepest values. Number 3, we define our unique mission, our values and our long-term goals, giving direction and purpose in how we spend our day. Number 4, we balance our life by identifying roles, setting goals, and scheduling activities for each key role during the week. Number 5, gives greater context through weekly organizing. Okay, so let's dive in a bit more and see specifically what you're trying to say here. So it's actually not even that long, it's just like page, basically the page. So advances in the 4th generation, page 192. Reasons why people resist using 3rd generation time management tools. They lose spontaneity. They become rigid and inflexible. They subordinate people to schedules because of the efficiency paradigm of the 3rd generation of management is out of harmony with the principle that people are more important than things. Fourth generation tool recognizes that principle. Recognizes that the first person you need to consider in terms of effectiveness rather than efficiency is yourself. Encourage you to spend time in quadrant 2 to understand and center your life on principles, to give clear expression to the purpose and values you want to direct your daily decisions. Helps you to create balance in your life. Helps you to rise above the limitations of daily planning and organize and schedule in the context of the week. When a higher value conflicts with what you have planned, it empowers you to use your self-awareness and your conscience to maintain integrity to the principles and purpose you have determined that are most important. Instead of using a roadmap, you're using a compass. So it's important to plan stuff, but not so rigidly that you can't respond to things that are unplanned. And that goes back to the fact that we're not omniscient. We don't know everything, right? And so we have to be able to still, in the moment, make decisions and do stuff. The fourth generation of self-management is more advanced than the third in 5 ways. This is why it's distinct from the third generation of self-management. First, it's principle-centered. Creates the central paradigm that empowers you to see your time in the context of what's really important and effective. Second, it's conscience-directed. Gives you the opportunity to organize your life to the best of your ability in harmony with your deep values. Gives you the freedom to peacefully subordinate your schedule to higher values. So again, it's value-based, right? It's not just time-based. Third, defines your unique mission, including values and long-term goals. Gives direction and purpose to the way you spend each day. Fourth, helps you balance your life by identifying roles and by setting goals and scheduling activities in each key role every week. Fifth, it gives greater context through weekly organizing with daily adaptation as needed, rising above the limiting perspective of a single day and putting you in touch with your deepest values through reviewing your goals. The practical thread running through all 5 is a primary focus on relationships and results and a secondary focus on time.
I think even though he didn't specify the good principle, he kind of hinted that it has to be a good principle, because he says something like the people are more important than things.
Yeah.
You know, like implicitly, he's already not neutral on principle. He's favoring something. Like he also talked about conscience. What is conscience? You know, conscience directed. It's just not some random value. It's about something. I just feel like he probably not only, you know, on the reason, you have 2 kinds of reason. I think which philosopher talk about, you have the reason as the tools,
Yeah.
and you also have reason as values.
Okay.
Right? So there's 2 kinds of reasons. So like the concentration camp, they also have huge reasons, you know, very efficient killing people. But they only apply the tools of reasons. They don't apply the value of reasons. You know, that there's a conscience,
Sure.
right? So, but I think here he already kind of talk about what is a good principle, not just any principle.
Yeah, well, throughout the book, he gives a whole bunch of principles. So at the beginning of every chapter, I list all the I draw out a bunch of them from the chapter, and I just talk about them at the beginning, right? But at the beginning of the book, he talks about the 4 endowments, or like factors or elements of the mind. And conscience, your ability to determine right and wrong, is one of those factors of the mind. That's what he says. He uses the word endowment almost in a religious context, so we don't have to go down that road. I'll just say property of the mind instead, you know, instead of being endowed by God.
But is it purely neutral? I mean, is it just like I said, you know, Hitler can also be very efficient, or can also be principle centered. You know,
well, we would have to criticize those principles, and this book does not give, like I said earlier, a principle evaluating mechanism. He doesn't talk about how to evaluate principles ethically or morally. He just says you need to kind of already know what is conscience, like what is right and wrong, and that's like a property, conscience.
Because this is related to the sun dumping the, you know, we talk about empathy, you know, you know, empathy is already, you know, in that there's something about the value, because, you know, empathy is a value, right? You know, it's not just about being neutral to anything. You know?
Well, empathy is you can value empathy, but empathy is like a psychological I'm having empathy for you, seeing things from your perspective or emotions.
Because he's already criticizing the son. You know, you
Yeah.
cannot be efficient with people.
Yes.
That itself already, reflected some what principle he thinks is good.
Mhm.
It's not just like any principle.
I think that the son didn't use the role technique because if the son recognized his role as a boyfriend, then as a boyfriend, part of your responsibility is to communicate to your girlfriend that you no longer want to be her boyfriend. And in order to communicate that, it will require more than 10 to 15 minutes. And that is when he made a judgment error.
I mean, I agree with you, but I'm just saying, maybe do a little bit argument with the author is, what if the son just have this principle that I need to be efficient with, not just things, but also with people. What if that is his principle? Can we still say that if he only spends 15 minutes, he's consistent with his principles?
Yeah, in the next, like,
Maybe there's some guy just like that,
yeah, like these habits are in the private victory category.
Mhm.
And then in the next 3 habits, it's the public victory. And so the think win-win, or like having a cooperative kind of paradigm towards our relationships with others, that is effective. And so the efficiency would contradict the effectiveness, like, principle or value.
So he think win-win is a value he preferred, right?
Yeah. That in our engagements with others, it's better to always have a win-win relationship than a win-lose.
I don't think it's there's something, I'm not sure I can just apply win-win, like in a relation. The purpose of the relation is to win-win. I think it's more about caring. It's more about, like, I don't know. It's like, I mean, win-win sounds very, very, how to say, very, I don't know, very, very material. I don't know. There's lack of the empathy. Yeah.
Well,
What is love? Love is a win-win. I think love is more than win-win.
Win-win is that you get what you want and they get what they want. Like both of you
Mhm.
get what you want respectively, and both of you are happy with that. That's a win-win.
Mhm.
So in relationships, when you
Mhm.
have a relationship, any type of relationship with someone, you want to make sure that both of you are happy in the current relationship and both of you are having your needs met by each other. Because if one of you is not having your needs met by the other, then it is no longer a win-win and that relationship is not going to go well.
I agree with that, but my question, how do we achieve that win-win?
well, that's a whole chapter.
That's the whole chapter.
All right, let's continue. So next section is delegation.
Mhm.
So we can accomplish all we do through delegation, either to time or other people. If we delegate to think, we think effectiveness. Transfer responsibility to skilled and trained people allows energy to be focused on higher leverage activities. Means growth for both individuals and organizations. Ability to delegate is the main difference between the role of a manager and independent producer. Number 1, producer. Producer does whatever is necessary to accomplish desired results. When a person sets up and works with and through people and systems to produce, that person becomes a manager in the interdependent sense. 1 hour of effort equals 1 unit of results. A manager, 1 hour of effort equals 10 to 50 units of results through effective delegation. So let's look at the book here. Delegation, increasing production and production capacity on 193. We accomplish all we do through delegation, either to time or to other people. If we delegate to time, we think efficiency. If we delegate to other people, we think effectiveness. So that's a principle. Many people refuse to delegate to other people because they feel it takes too much time and effort and they could do the job better themselves. Effectively delegating to others is perhaps the single most powerful high leverage activity there is. Transferring responsibility to other skilled and trained people enables you to give their energies to higher level leverage activities. Delegation means growth, both for individuals and organizations. Gives us an example about J.C. Penney. The wisest decision he ever made was to let go after realizing that he couldn't do it all by himself any longer, enable the development and growth of hundreds of stores and thousands of people. So this is important for management, right? Delegation. And initially it was about scheduling, and that's delegation of yourself to time. But now he's shifting this managing paradigm to group context, right? Which is other people. Delegation involves other people, a public victory. It could be included in habit 4. Focusing here on principles of personal management, the ability to delegate to others is the main difference between the roles of a manager and an independent producer. Approaching delegation from the standpoint of your personal managerial skills. Producer does whatever is necessary to accomplish desired results. Get the golden eggs. A parent who washes the dishes, architect drawing blueprints, secretary typing stuff. When a person sets up and works with and through people and systems to produce golden eggs, that person becomes a manager in the interdependent sense. So we're shifting to the next stage of this book in the development of growth, right? Delegates washing the dishes to a child is a manager. Architect who heads a team of others is a manager. Secretary who supervises is managing. A producer can invest 1 hour of effort and produce 1 unit of results, assuming no loss of efficiency. 194. So we have a diagram here. Producer input output is basically 1-to-1 ratio. A manager, on the other hand, can invest 1 hour of effort and produce 10 or 50 or 100 units through effective delegation. And he moves the fulcrum over and there's more output. Management is essentially moving the fulcrum over, and the key to effective management is delegation. Okay, next slide. Go for delegation. Do this, do that. Focus on methods. They become responsible for the results. So it's basically just telling people what to do specifically, like micromanaging. That's what he's saying. 2 kinds of delegation. Go for delegation and stewardship delegation. Go for delegation means go for this, go for that, do this, do that. Tell me when it's done. Machete. So in the previous chapter, he talks about the machete guys going through the jungle, cutting a path through the jungle. They are the producers. They get the job done. They're given a position of, if they're given a position of supervision or management, they still think like producers. They don't know how to set up a full delegation so that another person is committed to achieve results. They're focused on methods. They become responsible for the results. He was involved in a go for delegation. He was water skiing with his family. His son was a good skier, like behind the boat. He was driving the boat, and he asked his wife to take some pictures. 195. He was becoming super micromanaging in how she was taking the pictures. He was, they didn't have much film left. He realized that she didn't really know how to use the camera. He kept on being more and more specific on what she should do, to the point where he just basically would yell at her and tell her when to take the picture. Didn't give her the opportunity to learn to do it herself. And it was true go for delegation, one-on-one supervision of methods. Many people consistently delegate that way. How much does it really accomplish? How many people is it possible to supervise or manage when you have to be involved in every move they make? There's a much better way, a more effective way to delegate to other people, based on the paradigm of appreciation of the self-awareness. These are the 4 endowments of the individual: imagination, conscience, and free will of other people. Okay, next slide. Stewardship of delegation. Focused on results instead of methods. Giving people a choice of method and makes them responsible for the results. Number 1, desired results. So these are the 5 things you need to have stewardship. A clear mutual understanding of what needs to be accomplished, focusing on what, not how, results, not methods, visualizing the result. Number 2, guidelines, parameters to operate in. Identify failure paths honestly and openly. Learn from mistakes and others' mistakes. What not to do, but don't tell them what to do. Keep responsibility for results on the person doing the task. Number 3, resources, human, financial, technical, organizational, to accomplish results. Number 4, accountability, standards of performance used in evaluating result, specific times when reporting and evaluating. Number 5, consequences, what could happen, good or bad, from evaluation. Okay, next slide. So he gives this example of green and clean. So he wants his son to like maintain the lawn, right? And have like this like motto, green and clean. You want it to be clean, you want it to be green. So he said, you're free to do it any way you want, except paint it. But I'll tell you how I would do it if it were up to me. Stewardship means a job with trust. I trust you to do the job to get the job done. You're the boss, you boss yourself. I did exactly what he asked me to do. He signed the agreement in his heart. It became his yard, his stewardship. Trust, the highest form of human motivation. Trust is the highest form of human motivation. If stewardship delegation is done correctly, both parties will benefit and ultimately much more work will get done in much less time. Focus is on effectiveness, not efficiency. To empower the child to do it takes time. You have to get involved in the training and development. The nature of the relationship, the steward becomes their own boss. So basically the difference is that in the gopher delegation, which is micromanaging, you are just managing through the person. With stewardship, you're respecting the autonomy of the person and allowing them to take full responsibility for the thing. So you step out of the situation. They become the boss in the stewardship thing. They're taking care of the thing themselves, and they have to be committed to whatever it is they're taking care of, or else they're not going to fucking care, right? So let's look at the chapter here. Stewardship delegation is focused on results instead of methods. So it's the goal, right? Not the micromanaging part. It gives people a choice of method and makes them responsible for the results. It takes more time in the beginning, but it's time well invested. You can move the fulcrum over. You can increase the leverage through stewardship delegation. Stewardship delegation involves clear, upfront mutual understanding and commitment regarding expectations in 5 areas. The first is desired results. Create a clear mutual understanding of what needs to be accomplished, focusing on what, not how. Results, not methods. Spend time, be patient, visualize the desired result. Have the person see it, describe it, make out a quality statement of what the results will look like and by when they will be accomplished. Guidelines. Identify the parameters within which the individual should operate. Should be as few as possible to avoid methods delegation, but should include any 196 formidable restrictions. You wouldn't want the person to think he had a considerable latitude as long as he had accomplished the objectives, only to violate some of the long-standing traditional practice or value. Kills initiative, sends people back to the gopher creed. Tell me what you want and I'll do it. So it's important to have guidelines so the person kind of knows what direction they're going. If you know the failure paths of the job, identify them. Be honest and open. Tell a person where the quicksand is and where the wild animals are. Don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every day. Let people learn from your mistakes and the mistakes of others. Point out potential failure paths, what not to do, but don't tell them what to do. Keep the responsibility for results with them to do whatever is necessary within the guidelines. Next, resources. Identify the human, financial, technical, or organizational resources the person can draw on to accomplish the desired results. Next, accountability. Set up the standards of performance that will be used in evaluating the results and specific times when reporting and evaluation will take place. And lastly, consequences. Specify what will happen, both good and bad, as a result of the evaluation. Include such things as financial reward, psychological rewards, different job assignments, and natural consequences tied to the overall mission of the organization. So he talks about this experience with his son taking care of him. We're almost on the chapter. An experience in delegation with his son. They had a family meeting. They had their mission statements up on the wall to make sure their plans were in harmony with their values. He had a big blackboard. He wrote down their goals, the key things they wanted to do, and the jobs that flow out of those goals. So he asked for volunteers to do the job. She's like, who wants to pay the mortgage? Well, he was the only one working, so he was the only one who could do that. Who wants to pay for the insurance? Again, back to him. Who's going to feed the baby? Well, his wife had to do that. Next page. As we went down the list, job by job, it was soon evident that mom and dad had more than 60-hour work weeks. That paradigm in mind, some of the other jobs took on more proper perspective. His 7-year-old son volunteered to take care of the yard. He had a thorough training process, a clear picture of it in his mind, what a well-cared yard would look like. He took him next door to the neighbor. He said, look at the neighbor's yard is green and clean. That's what we want for our yard, green and clean. Look at our yard. See all the mixed colors? It's not green. Green and clean is what we want. How you get it green is up to you. You just can't paint it. I'll tell you how I would do it if you want. I would turn on the sprinklers, but you can use buckets or the hose. Doesn't really matter, as long as it's green. So let's talk about clean. Clean means no messes, no paper, strings, bones, sticks, or anything. Just clean up the yard and make it look like the neighbor's wherever. They got out 2 paper bags and picked up all the garbage. And they did it for one half of the yard so they can compare. Then he's like, before you decide whether or not you're going to do the job, he wants to tell you some more things. When you take the job, it becomes your responsibility. That's what stewardship is. Stewardship means a job with trust. I trust you to do the job. Who's going to be your boss? I'm not going to be the boss. You're going to boss yourself. How do you like it when mom and dad nag you all the time? He said, I don't like it. He's like, we don't like doing it either. It makes us have a bad feeling. So you be your own boss. Who's going to be your helper? Next page, 198. He says, I am. I'm going to be your helper, the dad. But my time is limited. When I can help you, I will. I'll do whatever you want. Who's going to judge you? He said, you have to judge yourself. Twice a week, he's trying to teach him how to self-manage. Twice a week, the two of us will walk around and you can tell me your progress. How are you going to judge it? Green and clean. He trained him with those 2 words for 2 weeks before he felt he was ready to do the job. What's the job? Green and clean. He looked at the yard. Was it clean? So like a week later, it was, or what does it mean to be clean? No messes. Who's the boss? I am. Who's your helper? You are when you have time. Who's the judge? I am. What would we look for? Green and clean. At that time, I didn't mention an allowance, but he would give him it because of the stewardship thing. It's a good thing to reward. So after 2 weeks and the 2 words, he thought he was ready. Saturday, he didn't do anything. Sunday, he didn't do anything. Monday, his son didn't do anything. Tuesday, still didn't do anything. He came home from work that day. The kid was playing across the street in some park. Page 199. It's not acceptable for him to not be doing his responsibilities. The father, Stephen Covey, was upset and disillusioned by the performance after 2 weeks of training. Effort and pride and money were invested in the yard. Excuse me. And I could see it all going down the drain. The situation was beginning to get embarrassing. He was ready to do the gopher delegation. Pick up this garbage right now or else. But he knew that he could get the golden egg that way. He can get what he wanted. But what about the goose? What would happen to his internal commitment? So he said, hi, son, how's it going? Fine, from the park. How's the yard coming? And then the dad said, I knew in that minute I have broken the agreement. So he felt justified in breaking it too. It's fine. He waited until after dinner and he said, son, let's do it as we agreed. Let's walk around the yard together and you can show me how it's going in your stewardship. As we started out the door, the kid's chin began to quiver. Tears started to come down his cheeks and he was crying. It's so hard, Dad. What's so hard? I thought to myself. You haven't done a single thing. But he knew it was hard. Self-management, self-supervision. Is there anything I can do to help? Would you, Dad? That was our agreement. Yes, I would help you if I have time. I have time. Next page. So we ran out of the house, came out with 2 bags, and then they picked stuff up together. And then I did exactly what he asked me to do. That's when he signed the agreement in his heart. It became his yard, his stewardship. So he developed a sense of commitment. So he's trying to explain through this example that you can intellectually agree to something, but you might not be motivated to do the thing, whatever that thing might be, right? He only asked for help 3 more times that summer, and then the yard was better than the neighbors. Trust is the highest form of human motivation. It brings out the very best in people. It takes time and patience. It doesn't preclude the necessity to train and develop people so that their competency can rise to the level of that trust. If stewardship delegation is done correctly, both parties will benefit and ultimately much more work will be done in much less time. If a family is well organized, time that has been spent effectively delegating on a one-on-one basis can organize the work so that everyone can do everything in about an hour a day. It takes the internal capacity to want to manage, not just produce. Focus on effectiveness, not efficiency. You can pick up the room better than a child, but the key is you want to empower or motivate the child to do it themselves. This takes time. I guess empower is used correctly in this context. Get involved in the training and development. How valuable is that time in the future? It saves you so much time in the long run. And it gives the kid a sense of self-efficacy. Approach involves an entirely new paradigm of delegation. In effect, changes the nature of the relationship. Steward becomes their own boss, governed by a conscience that contains the commitment to agreed upon desired results. Releases the creative motivations towards doing whatever is necessary in harmony with correct principles to achieve those desired results. Principles involved in stewardship delegation are correct and applicable to any kind of person or situation. The approach involves an entirely new paradigm of delegation. In effect, changes the nature of the relationship. Steward becomes their own boss, governed by a conscience that contains the commitment to agreed upon results. Releases their, we did that. So principles involved in stewardship delegation are correct and applicable to any kind of person or situation. With immature people, you specify fewer desired results, more guidelines, identify more resources, conduct more frequent accountability interviews, page 201, and apply more immediate consequences. With more mature people, you have more challenging desired results, fewer guidelines, less frequent accountability, less measurable but more discernible criteria. Effective delegation is perhaps the best indicator of effective management simply because it's so basic to both personal and organizational growth. Okay. So we're almost done here. So next is the quadrant 2 paradigm, which is basically almost last slide. Key to effective management of self or others through delegation, not any technique or tool or extrinsic factor. It's intrinsic. So the quadrant 2 paradigm empowers you to see through the lens of importance rather than urgency. Quadrant 2 day at the office, which is in the back of the book. We're going to do that next week. Enables you to see a business setting, how powerfully this paradigm can impact your effectiveness. Develop a quadrant 2 paradigm, increase your ability to organize and execute every week of your life around your deepest priorities, to walk your talk, not be dependent on any other person or thing for effective management in your life. Every one of the 7 habits is in quadrant 2, deals with fundamentally important things that, if done on a regular basis, would make a tremendous positive difference in our lives. So there's application suggestions. Number 1, identify a quadrant 2 activity you know has been neglected in your life. If done well, would have a significant impact in your life, either personally or professionally. Number 2, draw a time management matrix. Estimate what percentage of your time you spend in each quadrant. Log your time for 3 days in 15-minute intervals. How accurate was your estimate? Are you satisfied with the way you spend your time? What do you need to change? Next page, number 3, make a list of responsibilities you could delegate and the people you could delegate or train to be responsible in these areas. Determine what is needed to start the process of delegation or training. Number 4, so this is the book for personal and organizational effectiveness. So if you're like managers, organize your week, write down your roles and goals of the week, transfer the goals to a specific action plan. At the end of the week, evaluate how well your plan translated to your deepest values, purposes into your daily life, and the degree of integrity you were able to maintain those deep values and purposes. Number 5, commit yourself to start organizing on a weekly basis and set up a regular time to do it. Number 6, either convert your current planning tool into a 4th generation tool or secure such a tool. And number 7, go through a quadrant 2 day at the office at the back of the book for in-depth understanding of the impact of quadrant paradigm. So next week, we'll finish this added section in this part of the book. So we'll go up to 212 and we'll go through the end of this chapter. Oh, Daji, I didn't notice you had your hand up. You can say something if you want.
Hey, please.
Hey, buddy.
I just had a question earlier on about mostly. I wanted to ask you leadership when you're talking about delegation and everything.
Yeah.
I think it kind of relies on the people's dedication to whatever you're working on, right? Because if you're kind of delegating and if you don't want to get too involved so that you don't delegate, I mean, you don't dictate the process, you just dictate the end goal and the process is more flexible to their abilities and, their circumstances. How do you make sure that everybody's kind of like well incentivized so that they can do their own this thing properly? Is it about like materially incentivizing people enough? Does that truly kind of dedicate them to get the work done? Or is it something different?
In the previous chapter, he talks about the organizational mission statement. And so that's kind of what you would get the group to do, right? Is to kind of like go through an existing mission statement or create one together. And then, and if they're committed to then he gives the example of like that chain of hotels where like every person in the chain of hotels is like directly in line with the values of the hotel. And, like personalized service or something like that. Exceptional personalized service is like one of the mottos of the hotel or something like that. And everybody really internalized that value, right? And so when people are all in agreement to have the same value, getting them to put effort towards attaining that value isn't really that difficult, right? But if they don't agree with it, then it's like it's not going to be that effective.
So just one other thing. So like mostly to incentivize people to get not the work done, but to get it done the best way possible, not the quickest time possible, not the slowest, because we're not dictating the process here, but in just the best way, in the most beneficial way. Is it better to incentivize them materially, or is the fear of letting down the group a more powerful kind of force?
Well, okay. Intrinsic motivation is a better form of motivation than extrinsic motivation. So if you are focusing on incentivizing people with money alone, then that is not the best, right? It has to, like, as an employer or a person that has an organization like me with the Philosophy Society, I would like people to help me out with the Philosophy Society. That would be great because I'm only one person. I can't do everything. And so people would have to like really value what I'm doing and want to be part of that overall goal. And if you can see the vision, then you're more motivated and you believe in it and you feel it, then you're more motivated to want to help out, right? And that's intrinsic. It'll just, you don't need an external reward. Just the value in itself and doing that value is meaningful, right?
But I just have a question here, because this book is in 1970s,
89.
89 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is this, because we talk about treating people not just a means but also purpose, also purpose, right? So
And
I mean,
themselves.
yeah, but talking about this, does still give a sense of, I don't know, but is this a still advanced way? I don't, I may be exaggerating a little bit, like still like kind of manipulating people. I know it's very controversial.
Yeah, well, manipulating is like to deceive somebody, right? So I think that we can persuade people into agreement. I don't have to, like, for me to, like, a cult leader would manipulate you, like Scientology, right? The way that Scientology functions is it's like a pseudo religion, basically. L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction writer and wrote the doctrine of Scientology, where there's these aliens that came to Earth. This is actually, you can watch the South Park episode, it's super funny. And they beam down the souls of their dead ancestors into volcanoes. And then the dead ancestors like sprouted the souls of humans, something like that, right? That's what the religion believes. And they don't tell you that story until you got to a certain level within the cultural group, right? Within the social group. And so withholding information from members until they're sufficiently invested in the group is a form of manipulation, right? Because if you would have known in the beginning what it was, you may have been like, no, man, that's crazy. But they literally make you invest like hundreds of thousands of dollars to advance throughout the organization.
Right.
So that's not good.
Right, I know, but I know I'm extending probably beyond this book. But
Okay.
it's like if we talk about organization, for example, a profit-driven company,
Yeah.
sometimes a lot of times the management goal is probably different than the employee. Not necessarily, but because there's sometimes there's a conflict.
Yeah.
Like how much information do you need to? Does the president, does the CEO share everything transparent with the employees? And also the other thing is about the awarding system. It looks like the people who designate people, who gets higher pay than people who get what was designated. Why is that?
Designated or
Like the manager
yeah.
will get higher pay because the manager normally is the person who do the designation. Right?
Delegation.
Delegation.
Well, they have more responsibility, right? So if things don't occur correctly, because they're supposed to, like Elon Musk, in a talk a couple days, 2 days ago, was communicating how the one guy gives him a question. He's like, I'm impressed how you're involved at every step of the organization. He's like, well, I'm an expert in engineering, so I understand how the spaceships or the cars are designed, right? And so you need to be a master of engineering or an expert in engineering to determine if someone's a good engineer. And he's like, I have about 100 really skilled people working in Tesla, like really good engineers. And I can't do it all myself, but I have to understand the field to be able to say that this person is good or that person is not good. So if you're a manager, you need to like something came on my Instagram recently. It was stupid. It was like, what was it, like IT or like computer technology manager on average makes $350,000 or $250,000 a year in the US. And the ad was like, you can be this too. I'm like, wait a minute here. How many people are like the IT, like the top manager person in technology in the United States? Like you can't just like put it out there as if like anybody can just do that job. You know what I mean? Like to get paid more than $250,000 a year. That's almost $500 million, right? No. Yeah, $500,000 Canadian. There's very few people that are going to make that much money, right? So you have to have your skill and expertise has to be proportional to the income you're making. And so the manager, it's not just anybody that's going to do that job. They have to have interpersonal to be successful, interpersonal skills, but they have to know the field too, right? Or else how are they going to judge whether you're doing your job correctly or whether you can do the job? And so I'm just referencing Elon Musk because he spoke to that like 2 days ago. This is a good book. I would suggest reading the book. I have an extra copy if you want that copy. We can work something out.
I am going on vacation for 2 weeks, so keep it for now, but I'll grab it next time that I come back.
So considering it's your first time here, is there anything that you want to talk about before we close the day?
No, I think I'm okay. I need some time to process
Sure.
the information that I've gotten today. But otherwise, thank you for leading the session. And it was very interesting, the things that we talked about in the books, the information that the book was talking about wanting to achieve your goals and how to get to do so in a very effective way.
There you go. That's great. Okay. Well, I'll see you guys next week. So next week, we're going to finish this chapter. And then the week after, you still won't be here the week after. Okay. Did you want to be here for the movie?
What movie are you watching?
I'm either going to do The Peaceful Warrior or I'm going to do Waking Life.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'll wait one more week. We'll do a review week and then
Okay.
you can watch the review week. You can also join online too.
I will not be turning on.
I totally understand. Yeah. You're like, nah. Okay, everybody. So we'll see you guys next week. We're going to finish this chapter next week.